Joining us over here.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, DJ Logan, for doing this for us. Some lively music to start the day is always welcome. Thank you to all the participants, all the delegates, panelists, etc., for joining. As always, I would like to start by thanking everybody on the front lines who are helping us be who we are right now. Over the last several weeks, it has been very challenging, and we are deeply grateful to all the frontline workers who are working tirelessly to help keep our community safe. So many of them have done a lot to keeping the world going, and it means more than what we can express collectively or individually. In that spirit, I would like to thank all the participants, all the audience for joining today. It is events like these that help us come together as an industry, and friends and colleagues from the industry trying to learn and to keep evangelizing on what is happening in the industry. So once again, thank you for that. What I would like to do is to quickly talk about the topic on hand today. The topic today we have is mobile economy and advertising. And I think the context here is about how the forced change of digitalization has actually brought in a new wave or a new era of advertising that will happen on mobile. Mobile is synonymous to digital now in Asia, and therefore the economy is dependent on that as a medium. But before I go any further, let me first introduce myself. I am Rohit Dadwal, Managing Director of Mobile Marketing Association, and your host for the day. Along with me, I have a very esteemed panel of guests who I will introduce immediately after the introduction to MMA. Let me start initially by a small video on our welcome to MMA. Thank you. Also, a quick address on the social media. We are available live right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on YouTube. So in case if you have any friends who've not been able to register, colleagues, you can ask them to log in there. So quickly, I wanted to introduce MMA. MMA, we are a not-for-profit association body. Globally, we have about 800 members across many countries across Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia, and US. It's a neutral industry body that welcomes marketeers, agencies, media, publishers, etc. And we truly believe that mobile is the next big thing and the quickest way for marketeers and especially the chief marketeers or brands to reach out their consumers. We are here to help push, enhance, and accelerate the transformation of this medium, which is the medium of the future, and we are helping shape the industry of what that is. In terms of our initiatives, four main initiatives that we work on: cultivating inspiration, basically building best practices, uh, building capability for success, ensuring that we are fostering enough know-how in the organization structures, demonstrating measurement and impact. Every dollar that is spent always needs to be measured. We are putting all practices, best practices, guidance, and tools around that. And last but not the least, advocacy, which every industry body does. And therefore, our membership is empowered to just not just build uh, the industry, but also build their careers and their enough benefits from credibility building to exposure, continuous learning, and networking. These all are available, and this will be available as a deck and as a slides on the demand at MMA. So I'm not going to walk you through all of this, but the theme really is we are here to help shape the future for the organization, for the industry, for you individually, and we look forward to working with all of you, all the experts, and bring the change in the digital era. We've also been cognizant of the fact that there is a crisis at hand. We've built a sport hub for marketeers to learn what is the best way to practice mobile marketing and digital. And some of those best practices are put up on this platform, which are relevant on the COVID issue and in the sport hub. You can access it on the link provided on the MMA website, and the hashtag is "We Are In It Together." The theme is to really share all about it. Couple of other quick updates. We've launched our mobile certification program. So if you're not aware of it, yesterday, day before, we launched the first certification program. The first batch of 40 people got certified yesterday and today, and the next batch is in July 21st and 23rd. So if you're interested to help bring some learning beyond what you are doing right now and get some expertise, please feel free to join and engage with that. The other program that we are working on is the Ideathon program, which is bringing best practices of hackathon to business problems. So in case of any brands or publishers or others have any business problems that they would like to use technology to work around, they can. And you are most welcome to participate. The link is there, the URL is available. And last but not the least, something that we launched last week is an attribution assessment, fraud assessment tool, which really is all about every marketeer's ability to learn about what is happening, what is their internal capability, readiness of fraud, and it gives them a good perspective of how they can handle fraud as they move forward. Last but not the least, once again, thank you for joining this particular virtual panel, but there are many more happening. There are some of them are subject matter expertise panels on artificial intelligence, fraud. There's some about how marketing is done in a pandemic, and obviously this series of There's No Playbook, and I have a lineup of various other channels, other discussions. So we do encourage all of you to join. And as always, we would like this to be a very engaging discussion, engaging as in having your questions. We'll try and take the last 15 minutes to try and answer all your questions. So if you can keep sending your questions, please do remember to put in your name and your company so that we have the context. The panelists will have a good context of helping answer that. With that, it gives me an immense pleasure to introduce the panel today. As I said, we have a very esteemed panel, and let me start by introducing all of them. To begin with, I will like to introduce Sorry, here you go. Let me introduce Roshni. Roshni is the CEO and founder of Asian Parent. She's, let me change the speaker view so that you can see all the delegates. Yes. And she's been in the media industry for 15 years. Besides her interest in the startup world, she is a leader in the Obama Leader for Asia Pacific for 2019-2020 batch, and personally is a dreamer, writer, and a painter, as she claims. But she is also a founder of a Female Founders Network. I found it difficult to connect founders of the Female Founder Connector, which is over 2,000 female founders, and she helps mentor and channel. So welcome, Roshni. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Rohit.
Let's go from Asia to Europe. Tony Holdway has over 30 years of experience, has been the CMO of Dreams, worked in WH Smith, Shop Direct, and House of Fraser. Recently was also with Domino's UK, and has been a fellow of the Marketing Society Marketing Society and of MMA in Europe. In his free time, he likes to play music. He's a keen musician, and he owns 10 guitars. I don't know if you play all 10 of them and you get time to play all 10, but we would like to hear some of that at some point in time. And an avid West Ham fan, and is trying to get both of his children to become West Ham fans. I'm not sure whether they are yet or they'll get over the line, but keep trying. Thank you for being here. We can't hear you, Tony. I'll move on. I'll move on to Miss Thai. Miss Thai is the managing director at TNS Vietnam and an entrepreneur in her earlier life, has experience of working with leading marketeers and has worked with Castrol, Philip Morris, JW Walter Thompson, and as a consultant in agency life, etc. And she's a very highly regarded industry leader in the business in Vietnam and very well respected. And her passion is Ming Dynasty wooden furniture. I wonder where you get that. Maybe the proximity of China can help you get to some of that, but it's going to be interesting. I wish you had some pictures that you could share with the audience. And quickly moving from Vietnam to China, Dhiren Amin. Dhiren is based out of China right now and is the CMO of Heinz Kraft Asia. Experienced leader in the business, has worked across many markets from India, Southeast Asia, and Africa, if I remember correctly, and is an avid runner, Bollywood fan, and a cricket fanatic. But in his personal time, he likes to blog very frequently and visits every speakeasy bar in the city that he visits. So some stories that you can share with us. Well, thank you once again. Thank you for joining. Tony, I'm not sure if
you can hear me now. Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you
great.
now.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, not a problem. Great. Thank you once again. And as always, I always try and start my presentation with a quote. And I want to cite that quote right now. And then I'm going to get into the questions. All marketing is better when you know who you are marketing to. The change. So in this context, and I used this last week also, is we are now in that world where hardly anybody is not connected. And therefore it becomes that much more challenging for people to be not advertised to or communicated with or spoken to. In that regard, I just want initially maybe 30 seconds each from all of you. What does the world of mobile or the economy of mobile and advertising mean as we move forward? Why don't I start with you, Dhiren?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So to me, mobile is a reality. It's how people use and behave. It's something that you have. To look at mobile as a medium is limiting. It is a reality of life. It happens to be a medium, and it's one that we need to use. The biggest challenge with mobile is that inherently mobile is about conversation and connectivity in its true form, and that has no place for advertising because it's seen as an interruption. So to most marketers, that's the biggest challenge with mobile. So that's my 2%.
Okay. Ms. Thai?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, all good.
Okay, good. For me, mobile is very much means flexibility. So I think that's with mobile technology and advertising. I think that means there's no limits. So basically, you can bring anything outside home, making it move. So it give you greater flexibility as well as opportunities.
Okay, great. Roshni?
I think mobile is just ubiquitous with the way we're living life these days, right? I mean, if you look at just the number of mobile phones there are in the world, there's 5.16 mobile phone users in the world right now. So the way I see it is that, it's just something that can't be ignored.
Okay. So how does that play a role, Tony, if you want to give us a perspective of if it is so ubiquitous, if it is an opportunity, if there's flexibility and it brings everything along with that, what does an advertiser think about mobile and how should they think about mobile?
I mean, I think the amazing thing about, mobile's a channel, right? But I mean, it's an amazing channel, and it's a channel that trumps a lot of other older mediums and disciplines because it's capable of doing global, it's capable of being so expansive and so global, but also doing local and personal. It can move across the scale, and I think that changes the dynamics for advertisers and consumers. So its breadth of what it can do is incredible, and then brands need to get their head around that.
Okay, thank you. So if it is something that we need to be aware of and we need to get our head around it, and when I was having this conversation with you, Dhiren, we spoke briefly about it being, I believe that it's going to be recession proof, downturn proof, etc. So what is the relationship that helps you drive this this discussion, and where do we believe that this will actually follow through as we move forward? And what does that actually amount to in terms of the future, and what would that future look like?
So on that one, I think let's divide the conversation into 2 parts, right? Let's divide it into the foreseeable 6 months to 1 year when we are in a bit of a recessionary phase, and then the future. I think it is mobile usage will not reduce. It will stay constant or increase for people, right? Because when you're stuck indoors, it's your window to the world. So its usage is going to increase. The numbers should indicate that already. Hence, it will become the larger medium of being able to advertise and get to people. That's the first point. From that very standpoint, it is recession proof because advertising on mobile by nature is going to increase because of that reality for the next 6 to 12 months. Going forward, I think mobile advertising, if you call it that, is going to boom for one very basic reason. All advertisers look for reach or engagement. Mobile advertising has been ahead of the curve in terms of innovating on how to get to consumers. It allows for a much better reach at lower prices, allows for much better engagement than most other media. So its trajectory of growth is going to keep going for those 2 reasons. It's more cost effective and more engagement friendly. So that's my answer, breaking down into recession and post-recession.
If it is that cost effective and that highly engaging, as a publisher, Roshni, where do you see building content, building the services around it to be able to provide that context and that relationship to the consumer for the advertiser?
At the end of the day, right, content is the most important thing, whether it's user generated content or if it's just broadcast content or professionally generated content. I think as human beings, one of the tenets of making us different from animals is, of course, our faculty of understanding things and our brains and our curiosity and our love for knowledge and learning. So I think this is just the basics, right? Like content is really what you would say is Web 1.0, and it's the reason the internet even existed, right? It's to bring content to people, to connect people. And at the end of the day, the way I see it is that today, using the mobile, it just puts content in front of everyone. And if advertisers aren't looking at content and definitely digitalizing content, then they're pretty much just ignoring a huge part of the world's population. So yeah.
Okay. Miss Mai, there is this whole context of content, platform, and consumer, but they all need to come together. And this is in relationship with what is happening in the world other than just this channel, which is mobile. There are other channels that exist. There have been those channels that have been in existence for quite some time. And when we were discussing initially, we were talking about what is that relationship and how does that work to differentiate between TV, digital mobile advertising, and moving towards video and the engagement of television, which primarily was considered to be mainstream so far, and it is now being taken over by digital. So what would your thoughts be, and what does that data show? Because I know you've shared some slides also, which I will pull up on the screen now.
Yes, I think it's your question are quite interesting because mobile, as a matter of fact, has become part of our life. And especially in Vietnam, when we very much go mobile first, because all of us here having at least more than one mobile phone and smartphone. So I think that we are using our phone almost every day for almost everything. But when you're talking about media, mobile is often giving us a lots of flexibilities, a lots of opportunity, but very much getting connectivities. And especially when you had with COVID time, when people are locked at home, when you see that's the consumption on online and with mobile and also with other streaming content, I think much more. But at the same time, because of crisis, we also see the tendencies that viewers and consumers coming back to what we call more trusted source of information. And television, when you're at home, even though the mobile giving you flexibility, but the screen, the bigger the screen, when people have been looking for news and information, they also want entertainment. And for entertainment contents, then obviously the bigger screen, the better. And the smart TV also getting a smart devices and is getting much more intelligent today. So very much, again, people are consuming streaming contents online. And that's instead of, so we think of looking at mobile, we think that mobile is very much a complement to the bigger screen, which is the connected TV. When you're talking about entertainment, but at the same time, when you see something on the bigger screen and you're using the mobile and the second devices, whether you're seeking for more information, you're looking for relevant information about whatever you see on the main screen, you're also using at the same time using a mobile phone to conduct e-commerce or buying things. So obviously, we are seeing things connecting together. So it's not a question of one medium replaced with the others. So it's very much when you're talking about advertising, we think that advertising needs to balance and looking for the right mix across on different media to get it effective. Having said that, the mobile phone is very different from television. So mobile phones very much, the control is in the user. So it's very personalized. So therefore, again, I think that's if advertiser or contents wanted to get audience or get the attention of the mobile owners, then you need to prove the values, information or content you put in front of them. So,
okay.
So basically, I think very much it complements each other. And we had to see it's part of our life and we had to deal with that fact.
Rohit, to add to that, right? We saw the same thing as well among our moms during this whole COVID-19 situation. And it's quite interesting because, you know, moms are definitely spending, especially young moms are spending a lot more time at home right now because, you know, school's out and of course offices are closed. So whether they're stay-at-home moms, full-time moms, or, you know, work-at-home moms, they're spending a lot of time with their kid, as well as, you know, trying to find information. And of course, you know, even pre-COVID-19, we saw that 95 to 98% of our traffic was mobile versus like desktop traffic.
98%.
Yeah, up to 98%. But, you know, ever since we've gone into COVID-19 mode, it's actually moved up even further, if that's even believable, right? So who would have believed it would be able to move from 95% upwards, but it has. So, and when we started speaking to our young moms and asking them, hey, what's going on? And they're saying, we are holding a baby in our arms. We're holding a child in our arms. We're constantly zipping between 10 different things. So our mobile phone is how we're doing our work. Our mobile phone is our life. So we have our child in one hand and our mobile phone in the other. So it really also looks at which demographic you're looking at. And when we did our COVID-19 survey report as well, we saw that young moms were spending up to 8 hours a day on the internet, but they were also increasing in a lot of countries consumptions of television. But every other medium saw a huge fall and decline.
Okay. So that's very interesting. And if it is so ubiquitous and it is so prevalent, Tony, let me come to you as an advertiser, as a person who's gone through maybe the early days of digital when it had just started to a scenario where it is almost 30 in UK specifically, almost about 40-50% of the business.
Sure.
So what does the business mean? What does digital mean today? Now that it takes almost half of all ad spend. And this is an industry which is not more than 20-25 years old compared to the behemoths of TV, radio, etc., which are 100, 120, 50 years old. And what are some of the major trends that you see coming out of this from a growth model perspective, not from a consumer perspective?
I think what's happened in the last sort of 3 months has accelerated digital and mobile by possibly 3 to 5 years. You know, it's almost the trend line that was happening anyway has been forced to speed up because of the tricky personal and business circumstances. I think you know how a few years back people used to talk about mobile first, and they used to talk about mobile first in the context of creating an app and then sort of switching that to desktop. So you treat mobile as more important than desktop. Well, I think in the advertising world, you can probably now talk about mobile first again. So, and what I mean by that is, historically, much of the creative has been taken from other mediums and converted fit for purpose for the mobile. And of course, I think that will just that is changing, and I think it'll permanently shift now. I think brands should be creating content and advertising for mobile first, and then repurposing for other disciplines and mediums. And so that then in turn will mean that mobile spend will increase because that's the first channel you're thinking of. You know, it becomes the first line on the media plan. And so I just see everything accelerating, you know, as it has done in the last 3 months going forward, and mobile becoming very dominant advertising wise.
You know, it'll be music to a lot of ears when you say mobile will be the first plan in the media plan, first line in the media plan. As a person who is in one of the most advanced markets outside of maybe most advanced really is China, even more so than UK and US, because there's an ecosystem in China which works only in China, and you have a lot of insights into that therein. Is this a reality that we'll soon see mobile being the first line of a media plan?
Yeah, in China, again, dependent on category, but definitely for the categories that we play in, mobile is already first. So wow. you don't create media plans in China where they are not mobile first, for a very simple reason, because in China the ecosystem of of digital and mobile is way more integrated than anywhere else that I have seen it, right? You buy, you interact, you pay, you chat, all on the same platform. And when you do that, and the owner of that is two big conglomerates, which is Ali and JD. When you are working in this kind of ecosystem, you're working in an ecosystem where mobile and digital is number one. So I think it has already happened in China. My view is that it is dependent on market and market maturity and maturity of the category as well. So I believe, for example, in markets that I have worked in, if you think of India and Indonesia as clusters, mobile will grow fast, but for the perceivable future, which is the next 6 to 7 years, TV will remain the medium of reach. Okay. If you think about countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, again, as one cluster, those are going to go and see a shift from the traditional media of reach towards mobile and digital much faster. So their trajectory of shift is going to be way higher. With a country like China, it is going to be about how much better mobile advertising, mobile commerce, and communication through mobile start becoming even more interactive. It is already very interactive, but here it will be about the merging of purchase, reach, and advertising. So I think that's how I would like to show you.
Let me build on that for a little bit, Dhiren. So what are some of the broad trends that you're seeing coming out of China? Because China is also the first country that has come out of COVID, as an example. What are the trends?
There are 4 trends. So COVID, I think, broadly created 4 trends from a consumer standpoint, from a consumer behavior standpoint. The first is a heightened understanding of health. The best way to put it is, for any kind of food or beverage that you consume now, you're likely to check how healthy it is. That's number one. The second is the whole trend around in-home, which is in-home cooking, in-home working, in-home shopping. When we come out of COVID, that incidence of in-home is going to continue and stay. So that's the second trend. The third trend is around social collaboration, which is brands that collaborate with social causes, or brands that promote very local causes are seen in a much better light than brands that do not. The impact of this is likely to stay much longer because of the impact of COVID on people's lives. And the fourth one is what I call discerning consumption. The best way to think of that is down trading, which means people are either going to trade down brands, sizes, or choices as they go into a post-COVID world. They will stay with that. They will have figured out what they don't need, what they need less of, or what brands they don't need. And that will continue. It is known in a recession, 56% of brands that people downtrade to, they stay with. And hence discerning consumption coming out of recession is always a big trend. So these are the 4: heightened health, in-home consumption, social collaboration as brands, and discerning consumption, which is down trading. Thanks.
Tony, do you agree?
It's certainly what we're seeing in the UK and Europe. I mean, we're yet to fully come out of COVID, as per your point about China. But I could definitely see the last point in terms of discerning consumption changing. Certainly, as simple as people's salaries and how much they're earning, and wages being cut by 20% for masses of people would make you question what you're purchasing and what you're not. So I think people are going to want a bigger buffer next time as well. So I think, look, the mobile world's very exciting, but I think it's how people trim their belts and spending power outside of that, definitely.
Okay.
Just to add to that, right? We did a survey among young mothers across Southeast Asia on how their consumption habits would be changing because of COVID-19 and the impact of COVID-19. And it was very interesting to note that there were three countries that showed a huge switch. The first one was Philippines. 96% of young moms in Philippines, and we define a young mom as a mom with a child under the age of 5. 96% of them said that they would cut down on spending because of COVID-19. But then and then the second highest was in Malaysia at 91%, and the third was Thailand at 90%. Whereas if you looked at Indonesia, only 65% of young mothers in Indonesia said that they would cut down spending. And we saw that even in terms of down trading, we saw a lot more down trading happening in markets like Philippines or markets like Thailand and Malaysia versus the other Southeast Asian markets.
Miss Mai, do you see this as a global trend or as a Southeast Asia trend, given that we are influenced or we are looking at what the learnings of China are, where people are spending money, not spending money? Tony validates the point that the fourth broad trend of down trading is also being started to be looked at in Europe. But do you think it is a global trend from the global research that you guys are conducting? And where does that fit compared to the advertising expense that is being reduced by marketeers compared to what the consumers want them to reduce?
I think that that's the global trends that we observe. So everywhere people are more concerned about financial health together with the what we call the health issue or concern. But depending on different countries, where people having more concern than the others. So, for example, in Vietnam, I would say that people were very much because of our economy, even though we are very positive and optimistic, but we are a little bit different in the way that the Vietnamese are fully responsible for our financial hands, including our retirement sort of stuffs. So we're quite flexible. But when we see the COVID happen, then we think that it might, affecting very badly in our economy, where the Vietnamese economy very much depending on two things: exporting to Europe and the USA, and China also a very big trade partner for us. But the USA and the Europe, they don't tax our export goods. So basically, at the moment, Vietnam export a little bit to China, but that's it. At the same time, our production and manufacturing depends a lot on imported material. When we see that we don't have enough chance to come to the country. So even though we are very much independent because we don't live in mortgage, we are very much independent financially with the economy. So we're living in house depends and sort of stuff. So we don't have huge loans. At the same time, we know that the economy is different. So for example, in April, there are 14,000 of staff was put out of job because they don't have the offices or the plants are closed. So we see that's impacting our economy.
Okay.
Yes.
So just to segue from industry and marketeer, let's focus on the consumer. And like that, we have some people who are consuming this content right now. So I'm going to launch a poll for them. These are polls which are on the lighter side of discussion, not really about the business per se. So if you guys have access, please do a poll. The poll is video ready. How long does it take for you to be video ready for a Zoom call these days?
It's Rohit's favorite question these days.
Yeah, because people tell me that they take time to get ready for Zoom calls. But it has been coming up very frequently from people saying that now it's become the new normal. So you need to be ready or not ready for a call, and you need to express that very frequently. And that's why this poll. But while this poll is being undertaken, let me move on to the customer. What impact does content, framework, advertising, etc., have on the customer relationship? And I say that I'm going to close the poll. I'll share the results with you guys later. But there's some context to this. The context is that I was looking at some research data, And the research data said that while consumers do not want advertisers to stop spending money, only 8% of consumers believe that companies should stop advertising, while we know that we are under tremendous pressure of this thing. And there was a use case that was done that also kind of validates this, which is a simulation of a real beer brand saying that if they were to cut budgets in a downturn scenario, there is a huge impact on the brand and on the awareness and the media spend and the awareness, etc. And in this context, let me start with Ms. May. One, to help validate this data as to where this is coming from. And then quickly moving on to Roshni, if this is what the consumer says, and you are the connection between the consumer and the marketeer, what do you tell the marketeer? And then we'll go to the two marketeers on the table as to, do they listen?
Because I think that's, again, from the global study, as well said the study we had in Vietnam. Globally, there's only 8% of people think that brands should stop advertising, but in Vietnam, only 3%. So the reason why people want brand keep advertising, because they want more information. So they want brand also act socially, so what they call responsibly, because they think that if you give them the right information, proof that it brings values to their life, they want everybody collaborates and going through the COVID. So therefore, especially when you're locked down, when you're at home, then you're looking for more information. So you're looking for information to compare cost. They look for information to see whether when you are really looking at budget cutting or spending more cautiously, so you want to buy at the best values. And normally they will trust, if you has lost a bunch of money, then you don't care about why do you have to select so many information and decide whether it's useful for me or not. Then if brands stop advertising, then people don't have enough information. So basically that's why brands or consumer wanted brand to keep communicate to them, inform them if what they can do or can help consumer, especially during the crisis. But having said that, when we talk to some of the local brand marketers, then the main reason why they cut down advertising budget is not because they don't understand that brand or consumer wanted information, but the issue is they don't have enough products to serve the market. So they're afraid that if they keep advertising, if they don't have enough products to sell, they're also having problems. So that's a little bit of dilemma between brand communications and also the consumer needs.
Does that sound about right, Roshni? Is that where we are headed?
So I do agree in the sense that, some advertisers have stopped advertising only because of supply chain issues in this kind of in this type of pandemic. One of the biggest issues initially was supply chain. And if you don't have enough products on your shelf, then really, what is the use of advertising at this moment, right? In fact, it's going to frustrate a user if you tell me about something that I can't actually go out and buy. So I do understand why some advertisers have chosen to stop advertising. However, we've noticed that on our end, we're seeing about 45% increase in leads coming in and contacting us for marketing campaigns. So if I look at it year on year, we have 45% more inbound requests. Our revenue as well is nearly up more than 50% in terms of digital advertising. So I don't see a slowdown in digital advertising, to be very frank with you. And I do think that a lot of marketers do understand that at this moment, because there's so much of brand switching happening, that it's really important to have your brand on the forefront for people to know what is it that your brand stands for. If you are an expensive brand, why I should still stick with you and why I shouldn't go with your cheaper alternative or a cheaper competitor. So your brand value needs to be emphasized. If you are the cheaper alternative, you need to be talking to the user and saying, hey, I'm affordable. If you're thinking of saving money, then come use my product because I'm actually a lot cheaper than the next competitor out there. So I think it's about really doing smart marketing at the moment. And what consumers are really looking for is a brand that understands them, that understands their pain and what they're going through. when we speak to a lot of our consumers, we realize that they're really unhappy with sometimes the way brands portray something like parenthood or motherhood or marriage or children, because that's the category that we're in. A lot of times brands portray parenting or the stage of parenthood as all, powder pink and baby blue, right? All sparkles and flowers, when the reality is moms are the most sleep deprived human beings ever. And so if you're able to resonate with the user and you're able to explain very clearly why your product, as Dhiren says, has health benefits, is good for them, then you're definitely going to start seeing an increase in switching into your brand. So this is really a huge opportunity. And I do think that the digital marketers right now get it. They understand it. And that's why we're seeing really just a lot of increase in leads as well as conversions on our end.
Dhiren, big expensive product versus a cheap product. Good comparison. But in a category like yours, it is not, that doesn't really account for much. Cheap versus good. It's more about nutrition. It's different value assets, different product assets, different credibility to a particular product. And I know you've already stated that you guys have had the biggest growth that you've seen during this season because you are in that product category. But if that is the case, then there's this journal guidance which says if the GDP goes down by 1%, the advertising should go down by 4%. Let me ask you all, and Tony, you also, maybe it's slightly contradictory to what the norm is. Everybody claims they want to cut budget. Everybody wants to fall behind that shield of saying, oh, we have to cut budgets. Just because somebody else is cutting. I can understand the travel tourism industry, the airline industry trying to cut budgets because there is an impact. Why does everybody kind of follow suit? Why are they not looking at it in a rational manner? Why is this journal consensus of, no, it is the need of the hour?
So on this one, Rohit, I think, firstly, you have to look at a framework, right? There are three kinds of categories you can be in broadly. You can be in the category of essentials, you can be in the category of treats, or you can be in the category of luxury, right? And then you can be at different price points. You can be a premium brand, you can be a mass brand in each of these, right? If you're in the business of luxury right now, you shouldn't be advertising. There's no way you can justify it when people are losing jobs or salaries are getting cut, unless there's a genuine need. If you're in the business of treats, then you should be doing exactly what Roshni said, which is justifying why something that is a treat is necessary in a bad time. If you're an essential, you should really be advertising a lot to ensure that people are not downtrading from your brand, especially if you're an essential premium, which means you're charging slightly more for a product that is usually commodity, which happens in food and happens in personal care. So the conversation around budget cuts should never be either industry related or I mean, yes, broadly GDP and stuff like that will influence how much you budget, but that can't be taken into account in the year. What should be taken into account is your framework of what your reaction to a situation like this should be, is my point of view, honestly. The conversation around reacting to a competitor cutting is a myopic one because that person's reality may be very different. To answer your question, why people do budget cuts, the answer to that is quite simple. There will be some companies whose bottom line is extremely under pressure because they're not selling. And what they're trying to do is to protect the bottom line and say, at least I'm delivering profitability when I can't deliver top line. It is the most myopic way of looking at things because you're further digging yourself into a hole. But yeah, just to answer the two questions of how you should be looking at how you spend in these times and how you should not be looking at competition when you're in these times, because it's likely to lead to very bad decisions.
Okay, so Tony, before you help answer this, I have another perspective. And when Dhiren says that if you are in the luxury good items, you should not be advertising. My question is, the luxury goods are meant for a category of this Sec A, A plus or A premium, to whom these salary cuts and budget cuts anyways don't matter. So why is this? Why are we looking at it? And this is, I'm going to pull a slide out of the research that we saw, some of where the China money, and this is really China because China is truly the only country which has come out of it and has some trends. But why should it even impact there? Because there is a certain category, if we are talking about Louis Vuittons and etc., they don't appeal, they do not actually cater to the mid segment. So does it really, what's the relationship there between consumers and advertising?
Yeah, I mean, I think Roshni mentioned earlier about reasons not to advertise, about supply shortages, and I'd add to that what Dhiren just sort of said, where the last 3-4 months has probably been about survival for many brands. You know, how are we going to get through this? So just advertising, you know, that has resulted in budget cuts. Now, as we ease out of this, no, I'll wind back. Actually, for consumers, loyalties are gained and abandoned in these times, aren't they? Quite easily, people switch into doing different things with different brands quite easily, and may stick with that. So that as we ease out of that represents a tremendous opportunity for brands to advertise digitally through mobile, to be relevant and to show the consumer why they're more relevant in these times, and be top of mind. And I think that'll change now. So if people have stopped advertising and stopped spending, I think as we ease out of this, I think brands will change. They'll realise they have to grow, and how do we become top of mind in the category you're in? So I think it'll change. I think the next 3 to 6 months will be very exciting in the advertising world.
Okay.
Rohit, to add to the luxury goods spending, I do have quite a lot of analysis and insights on that topic, because I did study it for a little bit. But you know, even before the pandemic hit, luxury goods spending was already struggling, and as much as 30% of the industry revenue is generated by consumers making luxury purchases outside of their home country. So in 2018 itself, Chinese consumers took more than 150 million trips abroad, and they spent on average about 50% more than the average international traveler. So as you see, travel has been curbed, then naturally, you know, the top line is going to be impacted very much for a lot of these luxury companies. And McKinsey estimates that purchases outside of mainland accounted for more than half of China's luxury spending. So, you know, Chinese spending in Europe is down 85% compared to last year.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. So, Tony, Roshni, are you still speaking?
No.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize if you were. So that's a good analysis, and because of the travel. But I was just alluding as a pure consumer, because these are all the discussions that we are doing as business experts, etc. But from a consumer perspective, when they say that brands should not be spending cutting advertising, is because they are looking at it from their needs perspective, their relationship to brands. But just to segue, before I do that, I wanted to share the results of the poll for the people on the call. How long do you take to be video ready? 30 minutes is 6%, 15 minutes is 18%, 5 to 10 minutes is 32%, and 44% is always ready. So I was not dreaming or assuming that people take time to get ready for even for Zoom calls. It shows that more than 50% of the people actually take whatever time suits them, but they do take time. They are not in the always ready category.
And
So,
actually, it would be very interesting to see how many of this would be women versus men.
Okay, I can actually ask for that. If the people on the call, if you can raise your hands again on the control panel, all the women who can raise your hands, it's not going to be very. I'm not sure whether we'll get all the right results, but let's see if we can get that done. I'm going to launch another poll before we get into the best campaigns that I've asked you guys to share, and very briefly, maybe in 30 seconds to 1 minute, if you can talk about why you selected that campaign. I'm going to play those campaigns one by one. But before that, I have another poll, and this poll is primarily for people in Singapore and Vietnam, and maybe Tony, if you are still observing your lockdown, this thing of what do you do? What was the first thing that you do when lockdown opens? For us in Singapore, for me, I'm really looking forward to today evening because this is first day out, hopefully after 3 months. So it's going to be interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, while you guys poll, I had asked the panelists to share with me their best campaign that they saw during these times and why they thought. So I'm going to start with you, Tony. You selected the campaign from Cadbury. If you can, I'm going to play that campaign right now. And then if you can just summarize for us as to what was the rationale of you selecting that campaign.
It's like a Hollywood movie script, isn't it? Mm. You couldn't write it like this.
Hello. Okay, we're doing okay actually. What about you? How are you managing?
How's it going, bud? Yeah, not bad, mate, not bad. How about you? How are you getting on with this lockdown business?
Hello?
Hey, Kantar.
Oh, hello, Tom, how are you?
A girl down at one of the houses along my road here. She's just moved in from New Zealand. She even offered to help me. She didn't know me. But, you know, she knows me now.
The last few days been out in the garden, so that's been really nice and helping the neighbours.
Yeah, totally.
I've got 5 different neighbours that have offered to get things for me. All sorts of things, you know, that
Yeah, I think what Cadbury did there brilliantly. That piece of communication was out about 3 weeks after lockdown, so it was out in early April. So if you wind back to then in the UK, I think it just captured a moment. It just empathised with people. It just said, you know, it rallied the nation to help each other, to get behind each other, to you know, stick together. And I think it was just an example of a brand really in tune with the nation and sort of showing that we all need to help.
Okay, thank you. And I think it goes back to the opening comment that I made, and I always like to do, is the gratitude that we have towards the society and towards each other and to what is happening in the world around us. So with that, I'm going to quickly move over to Roshni's campaign. Roshni, I'm going to run the initial part and towards the end because it's a very long video. So I'm going to run that, and maybe then you can talk about your rationale of why you thought it was something that you would like to share.
Mari kita rakyat Singapura sama-sama menuju bahagia. Cita-cita kita yang mulia berjaya Singapura. Marilah kita bersatu dengan semangat yang baru. Semangat bersatu, majulah Singapura. Majulah Singapura.
So Roshni, it's a very moving video by the government. So I thought that was a very good start. I've seen it a couple of times. So if you could just share your thoughts, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was done by the government, so gov.sg in partnership with BlockJ, who did an amazing job with it. I think this, first of all, I'm a Singaporean, and the moment I heard this, I just broke out and burst out into tears, because this is our national anthem. And this is a song that every Singaporean kid grows up with, saying their national pledge and their national anthem every single morning while we're in school. And it was a beautiful rendition of our national anthem. So this is not the usual one. So just the song itself was so powerful. And it just reminded us that we're one united nation together, fighting this together, whether we're Singapore Airlines, whether we're the mom with sending their children to school, and that, times may change, right? Like the last line says, but at the end of the day, the spirit of the people never will. So I felt that this was a campaign that brought and rallied all Singaporeans together. And very similar to what Tony shared, right? Like it's really about being able to resonate and bring people together in such a pandemic.
Okay, quickly moving on to the last campaign, and this is Dhiren, your campaign. I'm gonna run the first part and then the last part.
Backspin on a work table under a bad light. A kiss off the 8 ball, a bank on the 6. Double bull in a single throw, 3 pints in. Picking up a spare on the final frame. Singing on key, off key, and losing keys. Steady hands, blurry eyes. Sandwiches with extra hot sauce. Surviving buzzkills, third wheels, The night too is for sport, and they are the champions.
Very interesting.
No, I didn't pick an ad that I particularly liked during COVID. I generally picked a commercial that I thought was something that I've always liked, which was Puma after us athlete, because Puma plays in a category with heavyweights like Nike and Adidas and Under Armour, who are always about competition and sport, competition actually. And they chose to go with a positioning which is about selling sneakers to regular people like you and I, and talking about how we are after our athletes, regular people who go to pubs and play pool, regular people who go and play go and do bowling or have a drink, which was very different from the world of selling shoes. So I've always found that interesting, and so that's the one I picked.
Cool. Thank you for that. So we're going to quickly move on to the Q&A section now. But before we do that, I'm going to share the results which are on your screen. Dine out seems to be majority of the people want to dine out as the first thing. And it's bigger than meeting family and friends, which is slightly surprising, but I guess everybody is tired of eating the same food at home every day. So that's the first change that everybody wants. So thank you for that. So I'm going to move on quickly to some questions. If there are other questions, please keep sending those to us. If we are not able to get to the questions, we'll try and get the panelists to answer the questions later on. So the first question that we have is from Gautam. In a pandemic like this, how is it changing consumer behavior or response strategy with respect to mobile? He is the VP of a cement company in India. Anybody wants to take this? I guess, Tony, given that you've had that vast experience of different vertical segments of the industry, what would that mean, consumer behavior or response strategy? We can't hear Tony. Tony,
sorry,
okay.
I think we may have answered this through a number of the responses we've given so far. I think the, you know, how you change the creative and how you make that more relevant for mobile and be mobile first, I think is key there, and that's the biggest overriding change for me, during the pandemic and probably going forwards.
Okay. Anybody else has anything?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll chime in on that. The reality about mobile advertising in these times is people are watching more, but you also have to remember that you were talking about consumer trends earlier. We live in a world where people are more worried today than before, worried about health, worried about jobs. So they look at any advertising they do now more than ever as something that should either add value from entertainment or value from transaction. If we are unable to deliver one of the two, so either a good deal or a good laugh or a good smile, it's going to be rejected, and the rate of rejection is higher. So you have to think about that when you craft your content.
Okay. So the next question that we have is from Agung from Indonesia, and it says, for country who's been developing the developing usage of mobile phone and smartphones has been relatively low compared to some of the other markets, and has been inaccessible because of the lack of internet or the connectivity, etc. What is the best strategy as we move forward? It is not what it should be. It's not an ideal scenario, but what should be the strategy going forward? And how do you actually build solutions which are digitally first for the entire value chain? Roshni, you worked extensively in Indonesia. It's one of your biggest markets, right?
Yeah, so I definitely think that, first of all, while data might be very expensive, at the end of the day in Indonesia, and one thing I did notice was that whether I was in Jakarta or Medan or Surabaya, most people went to the malls for free internet and they would hang out and get free internet from there. And there are lots of places that do offer free internet. So everyone, whether they had a data plan or not, definitely had a mobile phone, and they would try to leech off different places to be able to get internet access and surf. Then you also have things like, Facebook Lite and a lot of other things that you don't have to actually have a data pack to be able to have access to. So I do think that at the end of the day, it's really not about ignoring the people who don't have data. And I completely agree, mobile development engineering cost is relatively lower in Indonesia. And Indonesia has some of the best technology universities as well. Bandung Institute of Technology is amazing and churns out some of the best engineers from the region. So both in terms of development cost as well as infrastructure cost is starting to go down, and you're starting to see also more Chinese handsets entering into the market. Oppo has a very big stronghold in Indonesia. And as cost of handsets are also reducing, I think that this is just a trend forward.
I'd add as well that in a less developed mobile world, you can probably see what's coming. I think in our territories we would probably have done things differently a year ago if we could have seen what's coming now, and we would have accelerated, wouldn't we? And you can probably see what's coming. So why not get ahead of the game and go faster?
Okay. I'll take one last question. Dominique is asking, it's a long question, so just give me a second to. It's basically about the work-life balance and the split between home and office, which kind of has impacted. And I think it's a good question that I would like to take. I was hoping somebody does. Is what happens when the office opens up and work from home while keeping a large part of the consumer lives? Will things get back to how they were before? In short, will Zoom, what we are doing right now, will be seen through a different set of eyes?
I think that, like most things, when you come out of recession, it's going to be a little bit of less of the earlier, but also, people think of these things as extremes, and we're not going to operate in an extreme. People will come back, they'll use more Zoom, but they'll go back to office. Of course, this is a very broad brushstroke. It depends on the country you live in, depends on your industry. But generally, beings, we like human interaction. We'll go back to some of that, but we have got used to and know that a lot more of our work can happen on calls. And we are going to use the judiciousness of that understanding to find a balance. And every human being will find his own. So I think that's the answer, honestly.
Miss Mai, you guys are the recent people who come out of lockdown. Have you seen in the initial 2 weeks, have you seen this drastically changing, the work-life balance habit?
I think I'm very much going to get back to normal. But like Dhiren said, there is still much more. And when people getting a few we call behavior during the lockdown, when we get experience with digital, when we see things that we can do away from the office. So basically, it will establish a new balance. When before the pandemic, obviously you had to go to the office, whether you really need to be there. So, people are reluctant, or office or management reluctant for you to walk away from the office. But when you go to the pandemic and it's folks that had to walk away from home, so certain business, certain tasks you can always do at home rather than getting a fixed working hours. So again, I think that through that pandemic, it gives people a different perspective and see flexibility. So I think that for certain business, it will come back to normal, absolutely. For certain business and tasks, people can still have a new balance between office and life or work and life, whether it is working from home or from the office.
Okay. Thank you for that. And thank you once again for all the time. But before I let you guys go, one quick question. In one word, what does future mean for you guys? Roshni, putting you in a spot.
Yeah, I swear. Future just means unpredictable.
Unpredictable. Unpredictable in a good manner or a not so good manner?
Well, I've always been someone who enjoys, things not being the same. So
Okay.
I would say for me, it's a good thing.
It's a change. Yeah. Tony.
Exhilarating for me. I think it makes it even more exciting. It will be unpredictable, but certainly exciting.
Miss May.
I share Tony's view. I think it's very exciting. So I think that it gives us back to being human beings who should be adaptive and be agile all the time.
Okay. And Dhiren.
Roller coaster, 2 words, but
Roller coaster.
With a hyphen. Yeah.
It's very exciting for a lot of people, roller coaster, and I truly believe that it is going to be the foreseeable future is going to be very exciting. A lot of learnings that are going to come out of this, a lot of new finds that will come out of it, and there's a lot of new understanding of what's happening, what's not happening, how people are going to change their lifestyles. I think the new normal, as we will be much more well established. People will get used to the fact that there is, and something what you said at the very beginning, I think there's this general tendency to learn out of it, whether it's health, fitness, whether it's recession-proof flexibility or opportunity. I think this is all combined, especially with the fact that we are talking about a medium which is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger as we move forward. There's no looking back for a medium like digital and mobile as we move forward. So with that, thank you once again for your time. Really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you to the audience.
Thank you.
And before I go, I just wanted to let everybody know the next week's panel is Ideate, Incubate, and Accelerate. We have the people on your screen talking about where does the investment come from. Just a quick highlight for some of you. 469 unicorns in the world today. $1.4 trillion worth of net worth. But some of them are going to get eaten by the dinosaurs. So maybe a good key for you guys to watch out and look forward to. But there's a lot that is happening. Keep in touch. And thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
trying to beat it like a drum. Just trying to beat it like a drum. Just trying to beat it like a drum. Just trying to beat it like a drum. Drum. Just trying to beat it like a 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 drum. Drum, 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 drum. Just trying to beat it like a drum.